will appear. So it's been an amazing first year of FWD Live Life, and we are excited to be finishing strong on such an important pillar of well-being. When we say financial wellness, we mean the ability to confidently manage your financial life today while preparing for the future and anything unexpected along the way. To help get us thinking, we have two guest speakers today, and we're excited to welcome the best-selling authors of the book Spenditure, Paul Gordon and Jeannie Robertson. In addition to being the co-authors, Paul is a principal consultant with Aon, and Jeannie is a business manager with Aon. Paul and Jeannie have a strong passion for helping people to improve their financial attitude and awareness. In addition to their first book, they have now published a second ebook called COVID-2, a companion ebook available for free, written for the pandemic situation. They've worked together over the past 15 years to develop at-work financial well-being programs, which we are very excited to bring to you all today. Now I'll pass the stage over to Paul and Jeannie for today's session. And be sure to stick around the entire session, the entire hour, because we'll talk through the other exciting pillar number 5 activities towards the end. So over to you, Paul and Jeannie.
You're on mute, Paul. Hi, how are you going?
Hi, everybody. That is an error that I don't normally do. We're very excited to be here. And as Janine loads up our presentation, I just wanted to say that the Live Life Health Talks are a great initiative. And we really do believe that you're very lucky to have an organisation that is so excited to present this to you. So the session today is called Money Hacks. And what you're going to get out of this session, this is what you're going to learn. You're going to learn your own behaviour to money and that of your partner or somebody significant in your life. Mm-hmm. So that will be a skill that will help you through, because what we believe is by understanding your behaviour to money, you are on the journey towards being more financially well. So that's our plan. We also are going to talk about money hacks. And Janine, what's a hack?
I think a lot of people might know, but for anyone who hasn't heard that term before, really it just means something that can make you more efficient, something that's a bit of a shortcut, something that you can implement really quickly to really move the dial on your financial wellness. So we do also know that there is a competition where you can share your own money hacks. So hopefully something will inspire you today to think about the things that you're putting in place that other people also might be able to learn from.
And now, Janine, I just wanted to I'd forgotten to say that we're very interested in your chatting to us.
Absolutely.
It gives us a sense of what you're thinking. So we encourage the chat. If we can answer it along the way, we will. Otherwise, there's time at the end to touch on some of your chat. So use the chat function, please.
Yeah, absolutely love questions. Happy to take questions. But I do need to remind you that because we're talking about money today, everything that we talk about is general in nature. So if you do have a question, we're really happy to try and answer those questions, but we can't answer anything that's personal to you.
So just imagine that you and a friend are in the jungle and your friend has two pieces of information that you do not have. The first bit of information is that they understand that there's tigers lurking around. The second bit of information is they know the location of the tigers. Now, this friend is not really a close friend because they're not willing to share that information with you. That puts you in a life-threatening, dangerous position. But your friend is much more likely to survive this little jungle adventure And the reason why they're likely to survive is one simple fact. They're aware of their surroundings. And we believe that awareness of your money is the starting point to any financial wellness journey. And there's financial tigers in our real life, isn't there, Janine?
Yeah, absolutely. Paul, so I think if you're in the audience and you're thinking about tigers, try and put it in perspective of your money. So those tigers might be things like not being aware of your debt or of your actual money, perhaps missing some opportunities that are available to you. Maybe when something goes wrong, not being prepared for that. So we all have things happening in our lives, and some of those financial tigers, we can really kind of hunt them down a little bit in the sense of bringing our awareness to the situation, because otherwise you're at risk. Now, Paul was talking more about a life-threatening tiger, but, money tigers, financial tigers can certainly be something that is life-impacting, perhaps less life-threatening than a tiger. So what we believe is, or what we know, I should say, is that the foundation of your financial wellness really is awareness. Awareness of lots of things, awareness of your behavior to money, awareness of your actual money. Now, oftentimes financial wellness programs might begin with knowledge. So they might ask you to start thinking about budgeting or perhaps about retirement planning. But what we know is that awareness really is the start of any habit change program, isn't it, Paul?
Absolutely. And the jungle story is quite dramatic, but it's there for a reason. And it's there because I love telling the story, but also it does make the point that those who are aware survive better. And there's a lot of habit-changing programs that start with awareness. The most successful program ever commenced in the early 1930s, and it was a program designed to help people who suffered addiction get through life. And it was the 12-step program. And step number 1 is be aware and acknowledge that you have a problem. And that sets up the other 11 steps that are very successful. So we think awareness is very powerful.
So another example, just to really illustrate the point, is if you think about changing habits in your health, we all have lots of health knowledge. We know that perhaps we should improve our diet or do more exercise. Knowledge, it really isn't the foundation, because if you're anything like me, I know I could still do with a little bit more exercise and a little bit of a better diet. It really does start with awareness of where you are now, of what you want to change, of where you want to get to. And when we can combine awareness with knowledge, it really can help us find those light bulb moments, which is what Paul and I call those moments in time where something really just clicks in your mind and you think, I want to act on that.
Yeah. And knowledge is an interesting one because, there is so much information about money out there. You Google financial well-being or money tips or any of those things, and you'll be inundated.
Absolutely.
So to be aware gives you focus on what you need to know, as opposed to just go searching blindly. So It is quite a powerful part.
But the most important thing today is actually what you do afterwards. So whilst we certainly appreciate your time and your attention in the session today, the most important thing is actually taking those steps to action. Now, Paul and I really do believe that any small step counts, no matter how little that hack is that you put into place, that can be really a step towards having better feelings of financial wellness. So we really do want to get moving, but we're going to share some of those action tips and ways you can put some of our hacks in place at the end. What I would really encourage you to do is to think about which ones of them really do inspire you to action. But before we get into the hacks, there is one more piece of awareness that Paul and I think is just essential for us to understand. It's the foundation of your financial well-being. In fact, what we know is that your financial wellness, the behavior to money element, actually contributes 61% of your overall financial wellness. Now, often people would think that perhaps your income is the most important, or even that your age influences it, that an older person perhaps is more wise as it comes to money. But income accounts for only 7% of your financial wellness. So it's really quite interesting to start exploring your behavior to money and really building that foundation of awareness that we've just been talking about. The other thing that's really interesting is that we actually form our behavior to money when we're very young. A Cambridge University study confirmed that we form our behavior to money by the age of 7. But Paul, we say don't blame your parents. There's lots of contributing factors, things like personality, things like life events, and certainly the way you perceive things in your environment is really important for childhood learning. So Paul, before you get started, I need to remind the audience, we don't think any of these behaviors are bad. In fact, they all have things that they can improve upon, things that they can learn, and things that they can share with the people around them, their strengths. So do you want to run through, Paul, the 3 behavior types?
There's 3 behavior types, Janine, and please, now's the time to identify which one are you. So the first behavior type is called a spender. Now, a spender is not interested so much in money. They don't track their money. They probably don't look at their bank accounts. They're just not interested in all the conversation. But what they love is spending. It makes them feel good and they love spending. So that's one type. I'm sure there's some spenders out there. The opposite of a spender is a defender. Now, a defender knows where every single money is, where every cent is. They hate wasting money. So defenders are often quite happy with themselves, but some of them are so caught up that they just don't spend anything. And they have sometimes quite a miserable life. So a defender can be very good or can be very frustrated. Absolutely. And sitting in the middle is a slender. Now, the slender is somebody who sometimes breaks out and spends a lot of money, but then gets guilty. Buyer's regret, they call it. So they go back into their slender world. Or they get really good and start tracking their money, but only for a short period of time. It's not instinctive in them. And the key to this difference is a defender hates wasting money, whereas slenders and spenders, not so much. So have you worked out which one you are? And if you have not, then you're a slender because spenders and defenders are clearly identified. And we're already getting on the chat, a slender coming up. They're the majority of the population, slenders. But if you're a spender married to a defender, we often say, what could possibly go wrong? And the answer to that is quite a lot if you don't talk about it. So it's quite interesting. And the other thing that we find interesting is that Janine and I have been researching this topic for 15 years, and we came to the realization a few years ago that we are opposite behavior types. And this gives us really interesting conversations about every topic on money. I'm a natural spender. I've learnt some good defender tricks along the way, these hacks, but deep down, I'm a spender. And Janine is an absolute defender. She hates wasting any money.
That is true. And Paul, I'm not sure if you should say that we've had some good conversations or perhaps some debates or even arguments, because we really do approach these things from different angles. I can see some more people coming through on the chat and defining who they are. I would encourage you as well to think about the people in your life, those people that are close to you. Think about what behaviour to money they might have.
I think it's a good little action point to go home tonight and say, I was at this presentation and they said spender, slender, defender. And I started to think about me, and this is who I am. I started to think about you. This is who I think you are. And then I started to think of our children, if we've got children, or mum and dad. It's quite interesting. So here's our first poll.
So financial well-being can move. We've just talked about your foundational behaviour to money, but certainly on a daily basis, even shorter than that, Paul, you can have those feelings of being in control or even being stressed.
Yep. They say that if you're financially stressed, your IQ drops as much as 22%. How's that?
Gosh, that's a lot. That's a lot, isn't it?
So certainly during the pandemic, there's been different reasons to have financial stress. There is no doubt about it. It's uncertainty drives stress. Financial stress can come with a loved one maybe worrying about their job or how things might work out in terms of spending. Some spenders decided to spend their way through COVID. They saw it as a COVID spending spree, and you can see that in the amount of online shopping. It's gone up by 50%.
Certainly has.
Go figure. There's a funny thing. I live in an apartment block, and when the postal man comes with all the packages, everybody in the building races down because everybody's buying something, and he is now called Santa Claus because he brings all these little gifts.
Your postie must love that.
Yeah.
Now, Paul, I think it's important to say that, you could wake up in the morning feeling quite in control and then something could happen. So perhaps an unexpected bill arrives, perhaps an unexpected parcel arrives, and things can change. So what we're seeing in the poll results, and feel free to keep jumping in there if you haven't answered, is that most people are in that middle category. Most people are saying that some things are worrying them. And I dare say that in all the presentations that we give, we do see most people sitting in that category. So don't feel alone. What we'd like to do is move into some of the hacks that hopefully you can put some of them in place to improve your financial well-being just a little bit at the end of the session. So I might just end that poll and move on. Now, Paul, I know this hack is something that is really close to your heart.
Oh, yeah. I might just get rid of that poll. It keeps on popping up. Yes. This, as a spender, this was a light bulb moment, a moment where it just hit me that maybe there's another way. So maybe instead of buying my way through my happiness, I might put a few things in front of buying. So it becomes the last thing I think about rather than the first. And we call this intention. So it's being mindful of what you're doing. And there is no doubt that there is a movement towards mindfulness when it comes to money. And it relates to the climate. It relates to being more minimalist, decluttering. All these things that, we're sort of starting to talk about, and it's great because if you get into this habit of being more intentional, you will say this little saying, which I think is so strong. Once you need less, you will have more. And it really does work. It certainly worked for me. And on the chat, if anybody wants to describe a time where they sort of started to realise they didn't need so much and that decluttering actually was liberating, we'd love to hear. Or did it work? This is true, Wendy says. So that's our first hack. It's a funny one because it's not really a hack, it's a mindset, but a lot of this is mindset.
Yeah. So, Paul, when we had this conversation, as a defender, I said to you, isn't this the way everyone thinks? don't we always research before we spend? Don't we always think about what we already have? And it was an interesting conversation because it's one of those points where we really do approach these things differently. So I think this is more natural to our defenders and possibly to some of our slenders. But the real point here is intentional spending and really having focus and intention with your money is a great mindset to get into.
It's great role modeling too as a parent. I was just thinking of this in from a parenting point of view. If you can start to talk about this at home or even have this symbol up on the fridge or somewhere that says, let's think about buying last rather than first.
Yeah. I've just seen someone is looking towards a minimalist lifestyle for 2022. I really want to wish you luck with it because I think it's really powerful.
Yeah.
So we don't all walk around with that little pyramid in our pocket or on our fridge. So how do you put that intention into practice? How do you really do it? Now, lots of financial wellness programs tell people to stop buying coffee, but I'm here to tell you that is really not the best way forward. Although if you want to stop buying coffee, I would support that too. I want to tell you how you can use coffee to really help you. What we know about spending is that we receive a dopamine hit in our brain. So some of those feel-good chemicals in our brain just ahead of receiving something that we've purchased. Once we've passed that good over and we've received it in our hands, that dopamine in our brain actually drops off straight away. So if you can, teach your brain to delay that gratification, to pause before spending, to rewire your brain a little bit, to be intentional, it's a really good trick to be able to use your brain and use that neuroplasticity to your advantage. So what I'm going to say is next time you're in a shop, you're shopping online, you're on your phone, wherever you might be, I'm just going to say delay. So walk away, go and have a coffee or a tea or a juice or a water, whatever it is for you. Even if you're at home, pop the phone down and go for a little walk around your house. See if you can delay it. Because if we can teach our brain to overcome those feelings that we get when we're about to buy something, we might actually be able to put that hack in place and really support our financial wellness.
Yeah, so true. The next one is one that seems obvious, but not everybody does it, and that is to understand what your hourly rate is. In other words, what do you get paid after tax? So the money that comes into you, do you know your hourly value? And if you do, then you can start looking at purchases through how many hours do I have to work to buy that thing? And this is why we call it the 4-hour gene. So you might look at a pair of jeans and go, I've got to work 4 hours to get those jeans. Or if they're expensive jeans, I've got to work 4 weeks to get those jeans. And all of a sudden, your brain starts to compute your value versus what that costs. And it's very instinctive for defenders to think this way, but not so slenders and spenders. So just take a moment to calculate your hourly rate and then apply it to the next few purchases and see how you feel. You still might spend, but you'll know, you'll be more aware.
Mm-hmm. So I think you can see that we're building on these ideas. So be intentional, use that pause and understand your hourly rate. If you can combine those three together, wow, really powerful.
This next one is an equation. We love a good equation to help us out. And this one is around a pre-purchase equation. This is great for couples where you might have a spender and a defender in a relationship. It could avoid arguments. And the idea of it is, I'll use this example of buying a toaster. So just imagine if you go out and buy a toaster and all you want the toaster to do is to make toast. You're not interested in how it looks. And you're not interested in its brand. You just want toast. And at the end of your toasting, you're going to stick it in the cupboard so it doesn't have any look and feel about it. But when you go looking at toasters, the price range is enormous. So a spender may go and just be attracted to an expensive one because expensive equals it must be better. That's how spenders think, Janine. So what you need to do is try this little equation, which is what do I want it to do? How long is it going to last?
Yep.
That will determine the price. So it works. So if you wanted to apply this in a relationship, before you go in and buy the toaster, agree on what you want it to do. Now, the interesting thing about toasters is they all pretty much make toast, and they all last about the same amount of time. So really the price is buy the cheaper one because the things that are important are equal. Different on other purchases. If you're buying a new laptop or something that's very particular, the performance criteria might be such that time doesn't matter as much, so the price is the price. But on a lot of things, this works. This can save marriages.
So, Paul, if a spender and a defender are in a relationship and they've agreed to buy something, they've agreed to buy, a lounge, a laptop, a toaster, whatever it might be, when should they use this equation? When's the best time to kind of bring that structure or even that science to the conversation?
When you're sitting around the table in the morning having your breakfast and you're looking at the dead toaster and you start to think, we need a new one, that's when you bring this in.
Right. So not when I'm in the store?
Yes, exactly. In before you go in, just have something in play so that you agree on the performance criteria. So many people, when they go in to buy, are thinking differently and they forget what the performance is about. It really does work, this. I know we've got some chats on this. They're just moving a little quickly. We'll come back to as many as we can at the end, Julie.
Okay.
Yes, sounds good.
So, Paul, we had a funny conversation that we realised that spenders and defenders really do approach our to-do lists a little bit differently.
Oh, yeah. And we decided to call it the can't be bothered list. So this is things that could save you money, but you couldn't be bothered doing it. And we thought that some of the biggest ones are ringing a call centre to check out on a warranty or a faulty thing or to get a discount or any of those things where you need to be on hold for a period of time. That tends to stop you from wanting to proceed any further. Or it could be things like subscriptions where you couldn't be bothered getting rid of them because, you never know when I might need Netflix again or watch the next series of The Queen or whatever it's called. So it really became an interesting thing where me as the spender realised as I started to build this list that I can't be bothered to do a lot. And that's money sitting on a table that I'm not using and not putting to use, whereas Janine couldn't believe that these things weren't bothered.
So I really do put this list on paper, Paul. I attach values to it and I make sure I do things like return something if I'm not going to use it or get on the phone and, assess my phone bill, my electricity provider, my insurances. Now, I think the interesting thing here is that defenders really get some satisfaction from that. We feel quite pleased with ourselves that we've had a bit of a win. So, Paul, as a spender, how do you get on top of it? How do you you mentioned that you've put some hacks in place to improve some of the things that you've become aware of. What do you do?
Yeah, well, this is getting into changing the way you think about money. You've got to get into the mindset that every cent you waste is not working for you. It's actually running away from you. And that's why defenders are good with money. And that's why sometimes you look at people and go, why are they so good with money? It's because they hate the waste side. So the trick here is to go find yourself a defender. They're nice people. They will talk to you and ask them what they do around these types of things and create a list with them so they can say, well, this is what I do. This is what I do. It doesn't take long. Or pay them to do it for you.
So I think it's really important to write the list down and to attach the values to it, because I think when we can see it on paper and we bring those visual cues, it can make a really big difference. Something else that sometimes we see people not bother with, that I'm just going to give you a bit of a hot tip, is jump into your employee benefits. There's often some great discounts and things that we can use that sometimes we can't be bothered with, but if we did, we might find some great deals.
Yeah, and HR teams all around the world tell us that they get frustrated that only some people use the benefits. And they think to themselves, we've got all these great benefits and we communicate them well, but there's a whole group of people who never use them. Guess who they are? They're the ones that couldn't be bothered.
So I just mentioned visibility, and I think that this is a really important point that we need to make. Money has become much less visible than ever. Visibility is a problem when we're teaching our kids about money, but also for every single one of us who receives our salary into a bank account, spends using a credit card, a watch, even a ring these days to be able to, have that money come out of our account. So how can we bring some of that visibility back to our money? I think the first thing I would recommend, and this is a good one if you do have children, is to think about some charts. So although the money might be in your bank account, bring that visibility by having that savings goal or that debt reduction, stick it on your fridge, have a chart, colour it in as you go, really bring that visibility to it, and it can feel really satisfying to be moving forward. Another one that I use is passwords. If you do have a money goal, some kind of goal, any habit that you want to change, use it as your password. Now, you type that into your computer so many times a day or into your phone. Make that password, holiday 2022, whatever it might be, debt-free 2028. Try and use that in your day-to-day life. Images can be really powerful for some people as well. And we often have screensavers. So if your goal is something like a holiday or perhaps you're saving for a home, use that image on your screensaver, on your television, on your phone, because when we bring the visibility to it, it can help us with those pauses. It can help us to really focus on the things that we know are important to us. And use technology to your advantage. So follow things on social media that are going to help you and unfollow the things that are really, impacting on some of those spending habits that you might have, that you're becoming aware of and that you want to change. Technology really can help bring visibility to our money. You don't need to do a formal budget in the way grandma used to do it with cash. You can use technology and banking to really help you through that. So I would really recommend trying to find some visibility, and also if you do have kids, think about that visibility for your kids too. So Paul, we were talking before as well about the way people might approach deals and apps. And I said, well, I use them all the time. What about you?
Yeah, I think, this is, there's so many people we know, and I'm seeing Lisa here. She's got 10 credit cards, but she puts 9 in the drawer. I think that's fantastic.
I'm going to say you need to cut a couple of them up.
There's all sorts of programs that people can use to save money. A friend of mine, he will not go to a restaurant that's not on his little loyalty system. And he'll travel halfway across town to eat to just get a discount. But there's all sorts of ways of using these deals and apps. But what I did want to say before we went on any further, we're not anti-spending. In fact, we need to spend to keep the economy going. And there's a lot of businesses that have struggled during the pandemic. What our message is, be more intentional for yourself about spending. Absolutely. It doesn't mean don't spend. In fact, spend on things that are important to you, not just stuff.
Absolutely agree. So I think that these loyalty programs as I mentioned before, some company benefits. They exist in lots of areas: food, restaurants, transport, entertainment. I use them quite a lot. Now, someone did tell me a story once that they felt that using these programs had a bit of a social connotation, that perhaps you weren't wealthy enough to, go ahead and spend the full price, that you needed discounts all the time. And I found that quite interesting because I've never had that feeling myself. But what I said is, if you told your friends that you were saving towards one of your goals, if you were using that discount to be able to put that money towards, the house that you want to buy, the car that you want to buy, the holiday you want to have, how would your friend react? So if you are in an environment where you feel that, using loyalty programs or anything like that brings any judgment with it, really do call it out and say to your company that you're keeping, what are you using those savings for? It's really powerful when we can actually, aggregate all of these things and see how much we're saving over time. And then we can put that money towards the things that we care about.
Okay, we've got a couple more to go and we're running out of a little bit of time. So we might go through these a little bit quicker.
Okay, no problem. So I do think it's important to just mention debt. Some of us get into trouble, and I really would encourage you to seek some support if you are in trouble. If you want to do something about it, the best debt hack that I have heard of really works to human emotion because it helps us to pay debt down. So start with your smallest debt and get rid of it. Because when we have that feeling of accomplishment of having paid one of our debts off and we move on through smallest to largest, it can be really powerful to working with our human emotions. Now, I do want to share some of the links and support that you might be able to access in your region. There's lots of different places, and we can share this slide later on as well so that you can access them. But the other thing I would just say is use that technology to your advantage. Like I said earlier, what we know is that when we've got the things that we are focused on the front page of our phone, on that page one, we are more likely to pay attention to them. So pop those banking apps, those really great financial tips and hacks, the screensavers. Think about your social media feed and put that on page one of your phone.
Okay, we're not talking about cricket, but we're kind of talking about the idea that using the same amount of players, by changing things around, you can get a better result. So same things, different result. And this is all about a mindset. In cricket, they change the field around to get a better result. So in life, how can we change our financial field around to get a better result with the same things that are in front of us now?
I think it really is a mindset shift, isn't it, Paul? It's that belief that you could do better with what you've got. Those stories that we sometimes tell ourselves, maybe that we aren't good with money. But I think all of us can think about having a bit of a mindset shift. So you can see on the screen some of the things that we've already spoken about today, making some of those goals visible, writing out that can't be bothered list, checking out your employee benefits. And then things like the way we spend, our budgeting, and having an experience plan. What we know is that experiences give us 3 times the amount of satisfaction as items because we get the anticipation of the event itself, and the memories of that event. So just think about how you can automate and how you can change your own playing field to find some of those wins for you.
Yeah, I mean, this once again gets down to that idea that if you keep on doing what you've been doing in the past and you expect a different result, that could be a sign of madness.
Absolutely.
So you do need to change things up. And I love the idea of an experience plan rather than a savings plan. Savings plan for spenders means no thanks. But if you change that to experience, it changes everything. Now, one thing that we did observe when we were writing our book is that sleep has a bigger impact on our spending than we actually thought. There's a university study in the US that shows that if you're sleep deprived for more than 5 days in a row, your spending will only be able to really observe the upside of a purchase. So it doesn't see the downside. So just imagine if you've had poor sleep and you are looking at something you want to buy, all you can see is good news about buying that thing. You can't see that it might not be the right thing for you. It really is quite an interesting study. So sleep does have an impact on our spending habits. And since the pandemic, there's a new term called coronasomnia. Now, coronasomnia is poor sleep patterns during the pandemic. And this can be caused by too much time on screens, less exercise, a change in the way you're thinking, more worry, less worry, whatever it is, it can impact as well. And here's some of the sleep hygiene things that we talk about in the book. Things like reduce alcohol, because that really does muck up sleep. So does caffeine. Having regular routines. These blue light, I don't know whether you've seen, Google blue light. They're glasses that they're very inexpensive, but you put them over your glasses or wear them as eyes, and they take away those damaging rays that come out of your screens that stop you from sleeping. So you can wear these, be on your screen, and you'll still have a good night's sleep. There's Janine with some on there. She looks a little bit like Elton John, but not too much.
Paul, I think if people on this session today did nothing else, I would say really do think about your sleep and the way it impacts on your spending habits. It also impacts on health and lots of other things. So I really would say do a bit of a Google, think about your own sleep routines and sleep habits, because we know that there's a significant impact. As you said, you can only see the upside, the good bits of those purchases if you're sleep deprived. Now, I do want to just mention for women as well, there's more and more research coming out around men and women and sleep habits. Women have a 40% lifetime chance of having insomnia. And women also have a requirement to have slightly longer sleep than men due to our different sleep patterns and sleep cycles. So don't assume that you and your husband, wife, partner need the same amounts of sleep or should have exactly the same sleep routine. Find what works for you. It really is powerful. Now, back at the beginning of the session, I said that acting is the most important part of today. Now, I want to share with you a really great strategy that you can put in place for any habit, and we've got some examples on the screen. Now, this came out of a Harvard University study. It's called an implementation intention, but to make it really simple, you really just need to have a what, a when, and a where when you're setting up some new habits. What it does is remove the risk of procrastination. So perhaps you were going to calculate your hourly rate, like Paul suggested earlier. When are you going to do that? Today at 5 o'clock. And where will you be sitting on your lounge? The more specific we are with these intentions, the more powerful they are. We are 4 times more likely to act when we put this framework in place. It really does work, doesn't it, Paul?
Absolutely. It's for 4 times more, it's great. When we survey people afterwards, if they've done just one of these, they're on the road towards habit change. And habit change is much easier than behavior change. Habit change can happen immediately as you start to get into a routine.
Yep. The other thing I would say is think about something that you can do quickly, because when we start the ball rolling with something that's quick and easy, it really can help us. So we started the session talking about awareness of your behaviour to money. Remember the tigers that Paul was talking about? That really is the foundation. So be aware of your behaviour to money, of your actual money, and that can help you build the knowledge that you need to build to find those intentional moments and really take action. Because we think when you follow this formula, Paul, it really can contribute to your financial wellness.
And I think the question has to be asked, well, why bother? Why bother doing any of this? I'm going okay. Mm-hmm. The answer to that question lies deep inside you. What is your deep motivator in life? Is it your kids? Is it your own well-being? Is it experiencing new things, continuous learning? Whatever your deep motivator is, have that as the reason why it's worthwhile to really address your behaviour to money and your financial wellness, and it will keep you on track. You'll stay on this road. If you don't have those as goals and motivators, then you'll be tempted to jump off the road.
So we hope that one of the things we've talked about today has really inspired you to take action. As we said, any action is valid. It can be really small or really big, but by committing to taking an action, you're doing yourself a favor and really moving the dial on your financial well-being. So hopefully some of the audience have found one or two things that they can put in place today. We're seeing some great results there. Thank you to everyone for answering. I'm going to leave that poll open for a minute, Paul, just as we move to the next slide.
Okay, and this is the last slide. This is just a summary of, if you liked what you saw, Julie mentioned that we'd written a book called Spenditure, which is available through all the sort of major book stores online, etc. And I know that there's some for a prize next week that Julia will talk about. But we also, last year, our publisher asked us to write a very short 35-page online book called Covitude, which is your attitude to money during the pandemic. And the byline for it is never waste a good crisis. So it's going into behaviour to money, but it's also talking about how you can make the topic of money fun for kids and impactful. It also talks about loss, loss of job, or somebody around you might have had a loss. So how does money impact there? So that's downloadable if you just go onto spenditure.com, and it's free to you guys. So back to you, Julie.